There is no problem of life, in the sense in which we ordinarily use that phrase. And that seems an almost astounding affront to our common sense. Life not a problem. We see it as nothing but problems.
And this way of looking at the world in this sort of passive mood, as something that happens to you, goes right down to our general feeling about life. It goes down to the way in which, as Westerners, we have been accustomed to look at human existence as a precarious event in a cosmos that, on the whole, is depicted as being completely unsympathetic and alien to our existence.
Perhaps thinking about the world and objecting to its whole principle are simply two aspects of the same mechanism. But aren't there also times when we speak of something that we know as a subject? The subject of this book, the subject I am now studying. Would it be possible to subject to life instead of objecting to it?
So, say in Hindu mythology, they say that the world is the drama of God. God is not something in Hindu mythology with a white beard that sits on a throne and that has royal prerogatives. God in Indian mythology is the self. Satchidananda, which means Sat, that which is, Chit, that which is consciousness, that which is Ananda is bliss. So in just precisely that way, every one of us is a whirlpool in the tide of existence. And we are in every cell in our body, every molecule, every atom is in constant flux, and nothing can be pinned down. In just the same way, for example, you don't have to attend, unless you're sick, to the government of your own body. It happens automatically. It goes on day after day after day, and the better it is, the less you have to think about it. When you see well, you do not see your eyes. If there is something wrong with your eyes, you start seeing spots, and those spots are spots in your eyes. When you hear well, you never hear your ears. But when they start singing, then you're starting to hear your ears, and your ears are getting in the way of their own hearing. So on the deepest level, a person as a whole can get in the way of his own existence by becoming too aware of himself.
One of the characteristics of neurotic behavior, is it's repetitive. The neurotic personality keeps going through unsuccessful life patterns again and again and again, and nothing seems to be able to stop it. The round, or the rat race, of birth and death, that is to say, of life as we ordinarily live it. Because it is a round, it is a vicious circle, for the reason that we keep trying to solve problems that are not simply overwhelmingly difficult, but problems that are not problems at all. They only look like problems. And so when we tackle, impossible questions, things go round and round and never come out.
From one point of view, change is just too bad. Everything flows away. And there's a kind of sadness in that, a kind of nostalgia, and there may be even a rage. Go not gently into that good night, but rage, rage at the dying of the light. If you resist change, you have dukkha, you have frustration and suffering. But on the other hand, if you understand change, you don't cling to it, and you let it flow, then it's no problem, it becomes positively beautiful. Which is why, in poetry, the theme of the evanescence of the world is beautiful. When Shelley says, The one remains, the many change and pass. Heaven's light forever shines, earth's shadows fly. Life, like a dome of many-colored glass, stains the white radiance of eternity until death shatters it to fragments.
To object to this inseparability of pleasure and pain, life and death, is simply to object to existence. But of course, we cannot help objecting when the time comes. Objecting to pain is pain. So far as we know, the gull and the fish don't philosophize. They enjoy life when they're eating it and hate it when being eaten. They don't reflect upon the process as a whole and say how rough it is that we have to work so hard for a living, or it's just hell having to wash out all the time for those gulls. I'm sure that in their world, this is something that just goes along with life, like having eyes or feet. Are we misled by the fact that we move freely on the earth and aren't rooted to it in the same way as trees to the ground and fingers to the hand? Now we know that the atom, molecule, cell of any particular organism is what it is by virtue of its place and its membership in the pattern of the whole.
In other words, that what exists, reality itself, is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. Wow-wee. And all those stars, if you look out in the sky, as a firework display like you see on the 4th of July, which is a great occasion for celebration. The universe is a celebration. It's a fireworks show to celebrate that existence is. Wow-wee. So in this idea then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality.
And it is in this way that we also begin to be able to have some preliminary intuition or sensation of the meaning of the fact that life is not a problem. In other words, not a contest between ourselves and our environment. This conception of life turns out to be basically phony.
I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, I'm whatever you want me to be. It all comes down to the same thing. You're in a loving place or you're in an unloving place. I just want to be myself. If I lose a few fringe people who can't deal with the fact that there's other forces in the world, that's okay with me.
The meaning of life? You want to know what it is? Love yourself.
Jim Carrey is loved by many, known for his roles in Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, Ace Ventura, and many more. He's made a name as one of the funniest people on earth. Although for decades, there has been a spiritual side to Jim that is often overlooked or misinterpreted. In 2009, he told a story about a mystical experience he had, which pushed him down a path of spiritual awakening.
A few months ago, after knowing Eckhart Tolle for a while and studying the books, I woke up and I suddenly got it. I understood suddenly how thought was just an illusory thing. And how thought is responsible for, if not all, most of the suffering we experience. And then I suddenly felt like I was looking at these thoughts from another perspective. And I wondered, who is it that's aware that I'm thinking? And suddenly I was thrown into this expansive, amazing feeling of freedom from myself from my problems. I saw that I was bigger than what I do. I was bigger than my body. I was everything and everyone. I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe. And ever since that day, I've been trying to get back there. It's like riding a wave. Sometimes I'm on, sometimes I'm off. But at least I know where I want to go. And I want to take as many people with me as I possibly can, because the feeling is amazing. You know, it's our intention. Our intention is everything. Nothing happens on this planet without it. Not one single thing has ever been accomplished without intention. So I started thinking about my life, and I started thinking about this conference and what we're about, and I looked back and I thought, well, I was two people my whole life. I was in the living room entertaining people, being a monkey, you know, doing my thing for the company and trying to relieve my mother, who was suffering. She had rheumatoid arthritis and phlebitis and everything under the sun that was nagging at her, and she was depressed. And I wanted her to be free. And I wanted her to realize that her life was worth something because she gave birth to someone who was worth something. And then I would go into my room and I would sit with a legal pad. I was a little kid. And I would sit there and I would try to figure out what it meant, what it was all about. Why are we here? What is this?
Jim describes that he once read from Buddha that all spirituality is relieving from suffering. Similarly, Buddha summarized the reality of suffering in the Four Truths. 1. Our lives are pervaded by suffering, both obvious and subtle. 2. There is an identifiable cause of our suffering. 3. Because we know its cause, we can free ourselves from suffering. And 4. There is a specific path we can follow to end suffering, which consists of meditation, wisdom, and ethical living. Buddha's teachings on suffering resonated with Jim, as he realized that he was trying to relieve his mother from suffering all along.
One day, I read something from Buddha that said that all spirituality is about relieving suffering. And I suddenly realized that's what I'm doing in the other room. and I'm aligned. You know, my purpose is aligned with this. So I felt incredibly lucky. I lose sight of that all the time. I get caught up in different concerns and ego concerns. But I'm so lucky to be a part of this community and to do something that is of value.
And he's relieved more than just his mother from suffering. With countless timeless performances, there's something for everyone to find escape from their own life's strife. One of which being his portrayal of Andy Kaufman in the 1999 film Man on the Moon. Following the film, he had another awakening experience where he saw through his ego.
It was definitely an important moment in the process where I found myself subjugating Jim Carrey for Andy Kaufman and Tony Clifton, and then at the end of it looking for Jim Carrey again and having trouble finding him. And at a certain point I realized, hey, wait a second, you know, if it's so easy to lose Jim Carrey, who the hell is Jim Carrey? Or I was kind of watching from another place. And there's been a series of kind of awakenings I've had in my life, and you know, people chalk it up to depression and all that stuff. I think that, you know, grief and sadness and all those things are the ticket home to nothing. I think that was a part of the process. There's been several other awakenings, and yet still I have a lot of egoic attachments that pull my attention and focus.
This experience suggests that the distinction between Jim Carrey and his iconic roles can become blurred. However, Jim has an interesting perspective on this notion.
You said you've kind of disassociated yourself with Jim Carrey, but does, everyone, when we see your face, there's so many iconic roles and so many of our favorite movies, from Eternal Sunshine, Dumb and Dumber and everything.
That has nothing to do with Jim Carrey.
That has nothing to do with Jim Carrey.
Nothing at all to do with Jim Carrey. That's just what happened. And it is wonderful, and there's insane gratitude around it, and wonder around it. How did it happen? And fulfillment from it. And I look back at it, and I see something beautiful that rose out of nothing and happened for no one. It just was.
Like, it was almost like every 6 months to a year, we saw this like huge Jim Carrey comedy. Do you miss that?
No, I honestly, there's nothing but this. You're my universe. You know what I mean? So I'm not looking forward, and I'm not looking backward, and I'm not, the aspect of this that's backward to me is like a contemporary thing. What's good about this movie? It's not a look back. It's a contemporary concept. It's what's happening right now inside everybody. Is they're going, who am I? And they're depressed. A lot of people, because they're trying to hold up an image in the world. And that's what depression is. People go like, oh, Jim's been depressed and stuff. Well, yeah, I was depressed when I was trying to be the Wizard of Oz instead of the sweaty guy behind the curtain. But now I know that Oz is the character, and I think that everybody deals with that. Everybody walks around and they go like, why am I depressed? Well, it's because you're trying to be something for the world, and as soon as you let that go, better things happen, because they're just happening. But it's not, now it's just sadness. Sadness comes, happiness comes. It's the weather that flies by the sky. It doesn't sit on you long enough to drown you,
As mentioned, Jim has struggled with depression. He previously mentioned depression as his body needing deep rest from putting on an act. Here he takes us further into that journey.
I've read a couple of places where you said you've struggled with depression from time to time. I was on Prozac for a long time. Yep, I was on Prozac for a long time, and I'm not sure. It may have helped me out of a jam for a little bit, but people stay on it forever. I had to get off at a certain point because I realized that, everything's just okay.
No peaks and valleys.
There are peaks, there are valleys, but they're all kind of carved and smoothed out, and it feels like a low level of despair you live in, where you're not getting any answers, but you're living okay, and you can smile at the office, but it's a low level of despair.
And you don't take any of them, you don't take anything now?
Nothing. I don't take anything. I rarely drink coffee. I'm very serious about no alcohol, no drugs. Life is too beautiful.
After talking to you for a couple of hours, I get this sense you are a big bundle of conflicting emotions.
Really? You get that sense from me?
Well, I think you're very emotional about a lot of things. It's all very close to the surface.
Yeah, it is. I've decided to be there. I only act in the movies.
And his level of authenticity is apparent in these interviews. Perhaps it's because he's able to detach from his psyche and see a bigger picture.
I think that we're all trying to add things to ourselves so that we can finally define ourselves, and then everybody will get us and they'll go, okay, this is what you are. And then if you actually get there, you will find it so empty that you'll realize that's really not what it's about. It's about not only, just going with the flow, but it's about not taking it personally. It's like the difference between a house and my house is a world of difference, and it's the my that's the problem. So you can do all this without the my involved. You can do it in a way that it's not. Life isn't happening to you; it's happening for for the good of everyone. It's just it's a play. It's a giant field of consciousness dancing for itself, and you're here to make me happy, and it's making itself happy, It's like one soul. That's how I feel. I feel like, people say, well, I have a soul. You don't have a soul. There's no you, but I feel like there is a soul, and it includes everything.
Yeah.
And when you wake up in the morning and you feel like I'm the universe, you don't have to reach for the stars, you can just let life happen.
Yeah.
And walk through the doors.
Sir Paul McCartney is considered one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. He's famously regarded as one of the Beatles' primary songwriters. And not only did the Beatles have a profound impact on the sound of the 60s, but their cultural influence was undeniable, from rock pioneers to counterculture enthusiasts. It makes me wonder what Paul's thoughts are when it comes to the meaning of the Beatles.
But what do you think is the lasting meaning of the Beatles, if there's a meaning to be taken from this?
All you need is love. After the 60s, that was kind of looked on as a bit sort of stupid. Hey, all you need is love, dude. Well, you need more. We need weapons and we need defense or whatever, which is also true. But it's coming back. It keeps rolling back, this idea that what these people on this planet need is love, I always say to people, we could have had a really satanic message. And with the power we had, boy, we could have made quite a difference the other way. But we always chose not to do that. Nobody was remotely interested in that. We had this idea that all you need is love. Dude.
In the end,
I still believe it. I think the idea gets knocked every so often because, it's a violent world and that you do need other things. But I still think that's the message.
That being said, All You Need Is Love seems contradictory to what happened after Michael Jackson bought the rights to their catalog.
Michael Jackson has the rights now to all the Beatles stuff. How much did it bother you when Revolution was used to sell Nike sneakers and things like that?
Heaps. With the Beatles, we had all those offers. Anybody who publishes songs, you get those offers. Hey, can we use this commercial? We had the offers from the big soft drinks companies. You know who I'm talking about. Big, huge offers to use a Beatles song, to use this and that. But we always turned them down because we believed it'd devalue the whole thing. We'd be seen to be selling out, which we were keen not to do. We kind of felt that our fans believed in us and that we owed them some sort of integrity. We talked to them, we knew what they thought of us, So something like Revolution, it meant more than a pair of sneakers. But anyone who knows music publishing, there's a lot of pressure on you to do that because it's a big heap of cash, comes in suddenly, and it's very hard to resist for anyone. But I think we shouldn't do that. I think it's more sensible to leave the kind of legend intact, and I think they'll do great, the songs. I think they'll continue to do great, and I think to commercialize them like that, I think it spoils them. And having taken that decision with the Beatles, it's now out of our hands, really. We don't have the authority anymore to do that because it's now been sold. But I do still think it's a pity. And personally, I also think, as I say, it doesn't make commercial sense. I think you weaken, you end up with a weak catalogue of songs that are thought of as sneakers, automobiles, Snickers bars, and stuff,
If you are someone in as bright of a spotlight as Paul McCartney, you may look to the public for approval. Just like Paul's unique view on the commercialization of his songs, though, his thoughts on public approval are actually quite the opposite to what you may expect.
The only approval I really look for is my own, because it's the only way to do it. I've tried it every which way, and it really is the only thing that counts. Is if you like it, then you can give it to the world, and at least when the critics say it's a bunch of rubbish, say, well, I like it. And as long as you're convinced you do like it, that's the main thing.
Similarly, the world can see Paul however they like, but Paul's own outlook on himself is the pure version that shapes the core of his being.
The thing is, I am still that little kid that grew up in Liverpool. Okay, I got really famous, but in here, I'm still that little kid. So I'm amazed at the audience reaction and stuff, and because it's like, I still don't believe it. And the way I think, just like when I'm at home, I'm just slobbing out watching television. like anyone. So it's kind of him and me. Me is me, that was always in this body, and the body's just grown up.
Sure, the guy behind the eyeballs.
Yeah, and then him is that famous guy.
Wow.
He's very famous.
Despite Paul's insistence that he is like anyone, many people look up to Paul and the Beatles. But what kind of people do the Beatles look up to? One of them was Maharishi Mahesh, who was the person who introduced them to meditation and the reason for their trip to Rishikesh in 1968.
It was actually George Harrison's wife, Patty, who had heard that Maharishi was coming to town. And she said we should all go. It was one of those things. And I was personally not in a good place. I think, just overdoing it in the 60s. So I was just not very sort of centered. And I was looking for something. I think we all were. So we heard that Maharishi was going to have a meeting and give a lecture. And we all went along to listen. It was very interesting. It was very calming. And it seemed like something that was worth trying. He put it very well. He made it seem simple. He made it seem very attractive. And so I think we were all just sold. So what happened then, we went to Bangor in Wales, and we attended a little seminar there. And then eventually we went out to Rishikesh with him, which was more sustained. It was great. It was very straightforward, very simple. Wake up, you would then go for breakfast in the morning, a light breakfast. You just socialize a bit with the other members and just get to know each other. And then you would go back for your morning meditation. You'd go back to your room. We had little chalets kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Each of us had little rooms, which were very simple but adequate. And you would just sit and you would meditate. Then there was lunch, and you'd socialize and chat and stuff. And then you'd meditate in the afternoons. Sometimes Maharishi would have a meeting every so often with you. And you could talk to him about your experiences, and he would help, guide you. And then in the evening, there was a kind of question and answer session, which was slightly more formal. That was in a hall. And we would all just be in there, all the students, and Maharishi would come on and talk. And then he would take questions. He would just listen about people's experiences. And that was the sort of thing that happened each day. But yeah, there were some very blissful moments. I remember one in particular when I'd been meditating for a little while and I got to a really good place. And I remember the feeling was that I was a feather. I felt like I actually was a feather floating over a hot air pipe. And it was a very nice feeling. And I remember that vividly. And I reported that to Maharishi and he giggled, "Yes, this is good."
Meditation is something that comes from nothing, much like writing a song. Here, Paul explains his take on writing music.
Yeah, if you think, I'll write a song, which, if I've got some time and I'm just sitting around and I'm fed up with watching telly, I think I could do. So I get my guitar and I'm very conscious of the fact there's nothing there. I haven't got any idea what I'm going to do. It's a black hole. But then I start picking away and get a little bit of an idea, you go, oh, that's nice. And you follow that trail. And at the end of maybe 2 or 3 hours, you've suddenly got this thing, you've got this song. So now instead of a black hole, you can now go and play this thing to people. You can now present this little discovery. Look what I just done. And it's a great thing to be able to do. It's kind of magical.
And at 80 years old, he's still writing songs today. To most people, this may seem like an abundance of hard work, although Paul has a completely different outlook.
Yeah, I say to people when they say you work hard, I say, well, we don't work music, we play it. And even though it might sound a bit glib, it is true. To me, it would be a hobby if I didn't do it professionally. It's just something I love. It's because you're creating this thing out of a black hole, and it's very satisfying. So I love to do that. So I just keep on and on. I mean, I've always got a song on the go. I've got a few on the go at the moment, just because I like the whole puzzle of, let's try and make this song work. Is it interesting enough? Does it say it in a good enough way? Maybe I should change that line. It's an ongoing, interesting thing for me. And then when you feel you've got it right, it's okay, that'll do. And it's very satisfying. I can't see myself ever stopping. So yeah, there's a lot of work or a lot of play.
Best advice you've ever received?
Be yourself.
Superpower you'd like to have?
The ability to love without judgment at all times.
All I can do is prepare my craft to be diligent and focused enough for when I connect and when a wave of divinity flows through me, that I have the muscles, the craft to express it and to articulate it into some kind of something.
Michael Peter Balsari, better known as Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, is regarded as one of the greatest bass players of all time. As a founding member of the band, Flea was instrumental to its formation and success. In the 10th grade, Flea met Anthony Kiedis, who he later formed the Red Hot Chili Peppers with. Their friendship continues to last now and is decorated with many successes and accomplishments. 6 Grammy Awards, 16 nominations, an induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But let's take it back to Flea's initial encounter with Kiedis, the bond that sparked it all.
I met him when I was 15. We had both just started the 10th grade at Fairfax High School in Hollywood, and we were like almost immediately like in love and at war. You know what I mean? It's like this.
Has it stayed that way ever since?
And it's stayed that way ever since. And the thing that I try to express about our relationship, and I write about my childhood, and he's a huge part of my childhood and became my family. I mean, we were inseparable for many years, like especially when we were young. It was like every single day we were together. From the thing that I try to express about it in my book is that from the very beginning, I remember my mom, rest in peace, who told me a few years before she died, she said, I remember when you came home, you were 15. And it's hard because I get, she said to me, she's like, Michael, you came home and you were all lit up, and you said, Mom, I finally found someone I can talk to. And I really did, and like any really close brotherly relationship, it's, we go at each other too, but I found someone I could communicate with in a way and in a profound way that I hadn't had before. I knew that it was big, and I felt forces beyond me, like bringing us together. I had no idea about a professional life or anything like that, and sometimes I often feel that the longevity of our band and everything, it's not, I know our band's been successful and all that, but it's not so much the band itself that does it and all the professional obligations and stuff, and our desire to try to continue to be an evolving artistic entity, but like our band is a vehicle. It's like the universe has decided, well, here's this thing that'll keep them together, so just do that.
Anthony Kiedis wasn't Flea's only friend that he accomplished amazing things with. In 2001, Flea founded the Silver Lake Conservatory of Music with Keith Tree Berry, a former touring member.
The Silver Lake Conservatory of Music is a non-profit music school. I started...
Based on Silver Lake?
Yeah, it's in Silver Lake, right on Sunset and Sanborn. I started it 13 years ago. We have 700 music students in there. We teach all the orchestral instruments, all the band instruments. And, when I was a kid, I was kind of a rough kid. I was on the street, I was getting in trouble, I was doing petty crimes, I was on drugs. The one thing that really kind of kept me focused was the music programs in the public schools that I went to. It gave me a sense of self, it gave me a discipline, it gave me something to work on. And after I graduated high school in 1980, Reaganomics, they passed Proposition 13, and it really cut out the arts funding in Los Angeles public schools. Terrible, and it's never recovered from it. And I went back about 15 years ago to Fairfax High School to talk to the music students there about a career in music. And I was just shocked when I walked in there. They had no instruments, they had no orchestra, they had a volunteer teacher, a boombox, they listened to music and talk about it. When I was there, I played in a big orchestra, I could play any instrument I wanted, it was incredible. So I really vowed to myself to do something to try to fill the void in music education. Because I know there are a lot of kids like me that it would change their lives. It's just been an absolutely transcendently incredible experience having this school, Larry. It's been seeing these kids, so many of these kids, it means so much to them. And seeing especially the ones that are really earnest and really care about it, it's just great to see them blossom and grow.
Other people in the band work at the school?
No, we do, some have, like we do performances for the kids and fundraisers and stuff. It's just been just a little bit about the school. The school is not about being famous, it's not about being an entertainer, it's a really academic school. It's a process-based thing. It's not even about music education as a means to an end. It's just about the educational process itself and teaching kids to, enrich their lives with music.
Why, whenever they make budget cuts in education, arts go first?
I don't know. It's terrible. For us, we think about it as, the 3 A's instead of the 3 R's, and arts, academics, and athletics all being of equal importance, and they should all be given equal attention in school.
And he's continued to hold arts and athletics near and dear to his heart. Given his amazing stage presence, it's no surprise he uses these tools to connect mind, spirit, and body, allowing him to remain in the present moment.
When I'm in a healthy creative space, when I'm truly able to get gone in my creativity, whether the work that I'm doing is of a high quality or not, I become present. And when I'm present, I'm able to be there for other people. Music and all forms of art as well. And for me, athletics as well, like motion, anything that makes you completely present in the fucking moment and alive with all of, mind, spirit, and body, everything there is, for me, it's always been a search for that. That's why, even when I had no idea what it was, even doing drugs, that was the bliss that I was searching for, was to be present. And it wasn't until I got older and stopped doing drugs and, went through traumas that made me confront my childhood trauma that let me know that that's what I was searching for. I just didn't have to fucking shoot heroin in order to achieve it. There were other ways.
As mentioned, Flea has had his battles with drug addiction. This resurfaced when, after years of hard work, the Chili Peppers finally bursted into stardom. The stark change of lifestyle took an intense toll on Flea's mental health. It took a well-respected friend's words of wisdom to get him through the hardest times of his life.
I was about 30 years old in 1991, 92, 29 years old, just turning 30. And I became incredibly ill. And also, my band had just become this, we had gone from years of, sleeping on people's floors, touring in vans, doing all that. And all of a sudden, everything we wanted came. All the money, all the validation, all the "you're so great." And I became so sick, and it wouldn't go away. And for 2 years, I lost it. My immune system fell apart. Everything that I thought made me great. I could rock out all night, I could take drugs, play basketball all day, be the funniest guy, be the drunk guy, be the high guy, be the this guy, and I had nothing. And everything that I thought was me was gone, and it was completely traumatic. And it was like the universe forcing me to sit still and to deal with myself. Everything fell apart, I stopped, I canceled everything, I went home. And I was in tears all the time. I was depressed. I was miserable. And I was like that for about over a year. I started going to doctors and trying this and meditating and, help, Mr. Wizard, and I knew I can't do drugs anymore. I can't. I stopped everything. But it wasn't until there's someone, a woman I really respected, told me, she was like, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm just fucking miserable. I'm so sad every day." And she said, "Well, Flea, until you get on your knees and be grateful for exactly where you are, it's not going to change." And that's what I did. Devastatingly humbling, But it literally, it's like at that moment, everything shifted in my life. It was a watershed moment.
Since then, he's exploded back into the music scene, creating numerous musical masterpieces. From Give It Away to Under the Bridge, there's something we can all enjoy. Flea is so talented and well-practiced that his playing often seems effortless. Even so, he speaks of creative frustrations that he still struggles with in the present day.
In every creative endeavor I do, in a state of fear, in a state of not being good enough, in a state of yearning and reaching for trying to fulfill the feeling of what I want, of what I want to connect with. You know, I mean, I have my moments. I have my moments when I'm gone, like when I'm playing live and I'm absolutely gone. And I know that where was that hour? Well, I was just a channel, you know. You know, you hear like great actors talk about acting. They're always looking to get lost, to get in the moment, to be gone, to let their true self out, even when they're being someone else. I have moments of, like, I get anxiety a lot when recording because I'm always looking, I'm yearning so much to get in this, like, lost and beyond thought and gone and just feeling like I'm just, light is coming through me, you know? And when I can't get there, and I know I'm sitting here thinking about it, thinking about, well, maybe my wife would dance if I played this, so this has got to be good because her and all her girlfriends would dance. But even then, I'm mad at myself because I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And like, even if it was a moment of levity and I actually kind of got into a good rhythm for a minute, I'm like, fuck, I'm thinking. And then I start having a panic attack because I'm not supposed to be thinking, I'm supposed to be gone. So I have that struggle. But Rick gave me an analogy once, Rick Rubin, about similar to ditch digging. He's like, it's like Flea, you're going fishing. You know, you can't get the magic groove every time. You cast your thing, you're diligent, you stay there, you're always fishing. And sometimes you catch, you know, the magic behemoth, you know, Beowulf rears his head from the depth and, you know, everything happens. And sometimes you sit there and get a sunburn, you know. And that was kind of a similar analogy for me.
And I think it's safe to say, when he is able to clear his mind of thought, there truly is something magical expressed. But what does Flea want his audience to take away from this expression?
All I want the work to be a vehicle for connection, to bring people together, to create love and create empathy. And for people to just trip out and get lost and have joy and to identify it. Well, I guess, let me simplify this. I want any art I make to serve the purpose of making people feel less alone. That's the whole thing.
Robin Williams is a man that is loved by many. Known for his comedic genius and his passionate acting, he's someone that fully embodied every character he played. Robin seemed to take new life lessons from every movie he worked on. In many interviews, he speaks of the experiences he had working on the 1989 film Dead Poets Society with director Peter Weir. He states that Peter is more than just a director, he's also a teacher.
There's been no movie that I've walked away from, even the ones that didn't do well, where you don't go, I learned a lot. You know.
What about Dead Poets Society with Peter Weir?
One of the greatest experiences. It was incredible. It was the true learning experience because Peter's more than a director, he's a teacher. I don't know anybody who's worked with him that comes away going, well, that was nice. You come away a different person. He infuses you, like when we were doing that movie, he gave us poetry, he gave us music. He played music during takes that would just get you into this incredible spirit and very inspiring. I remember when the boys stood on their desk, I was going, this is very powerful. I looked over and I saw a Teamster crying and I went, okay, this is really working. But it was this inspirational movie where it's the first time I did a film where people were touched beyond the movie, where they want to change their lives. And I hope for the better. Many people said they became teachers. I went, oh, good luck. Especially picking that profession in America where you know that's going to be really, you have to be dedicated to be that.
Done with Peter Weir, who was an amazing director.
Did you tone yourself down a bit for that? He was not as off the wall as you.
Yeah, but he said basically that, there's no need. Man lives, just let his ideas speak for that and commit to the ideas. He was the one that said, just because you say action, you don't necessarily have to act, which is great. It's a very freeing thing to say, just be in it. And that's great. It was wonderful.
In The Fisher King, Robin plays a man who becomes catatonic after witnessing his wife's death. It's a difficult film to break down due to the many complex layers it possesses. Even Robin has a hard time explaining the meaning of the film, although his words will do much more justice than mine.
It's about a lot of things, but it's a little difficult to grasp in like 2 seconds.
I don't think you can tell them about one thing. I think that's what it doesn't come and say, it's about trust, it's about compassion, it's about pain, and then you start getting this list of, if in anything, the core of it is about compassion. And it's in that sense, it uses that Christian myth of the Fisher King, which is about the nature of compassion and what is it. And it is not out looking all over the place, but it's, it is right there in front of you, and dealing with the simplest pains. To see someone, it's like the last line of the thing, I didn't see a king, I only saw a man who was thirsty. It was that. It's that simple, and it has to be a fool who does it. And it almost sounds Buddhist in the way it is. It's like something that's so simple, but yet so lost in most people. The story of the Fisher King. It isn't. People say, "Is this movie about homelessness?" No, it's about damaged people. Who he has in essence a home. He lives in a basement of a building, but it's about dealing with people more than just on the level of, if I give enough money, they'll go away. That doesn't deal.
Trying to get their life together.
It's about 4 people trying to get their lives together, and through connection with other people. And in the end, that's all you have, There's this incredible loneliness that you can experience to the point where he creates a whole other person to deal with, to come out of, to find redemption, to find himself again from a horribly traumatic event that happens every other day in America.
It's just about impossible to talk about Robin Williams without mentioning his comedies. There's many teachings to pull from his serious roles, but even his comedies offer a substantial amount of wisdom. Here Robin relates the 1992 film Toys to concerns he has for the younger generation.
Kids have too many toys in this country. In the West, indeed, kids have too many toys.
It may be true. I think they have toys that don't allow them to use their imagination.
So many toys have forgotten how to play.
Yeah, because when you have that many things, you're just kind of inundated. You can see that sometimes when they go, where do I begin? And they also have toys that do everything for them so they don't have to create it. I mean, they have interactive toys. They have the ones that, good morning, how are you? I'm always frightened that those interactive ones, you're going to wake up one day and they have a little knife going, I don't like Daddy. These are the things you have to remember that. Even video games, I play them with my son, but it seems like everything is done for you. You don't have to imagine it. There's also a dangerous thing because you tend to just be focused on the game and you won't relate to each other. You just be like this.
In the cartoon Fern Gully, he raises awareness for the Australian rainforest. He also relates to American forests in this interview.
I did that cartoon Fern Gully, which was trying to just make a point, just to try and teach a little awareness on that level.
This was an Australian setting?
Yeah, it was on the Australian rainforests, which you're losing at a rapid rate, and so are we. Everyone, they're cutting them down. In America, everyone talks about the Amazonian rainforest, but America has lost more of their old-growth, incredible woods than any place, and they're all gone. And it's usually just to sell to Japanese for paneling.
Do people want to hear Robin Williams tell them that? Don't we want a comedian to divert us from problems we can do nothing about?
Yeah, you could, and it'd be quite nice, and then eventually we'll all be doing comedy, and I'll be going,
don't you just hate it when your oxygen filter backs up?
I mean, you can divert or you can make people aware of it, and that's what comedy can do without, stuffing it down your throat,
Many people consider Robin Williams one of the greatest comics and actors of all time. But where is it he gets the inspiration from?
I think that sometimes when I perform, that it's just you open yourself up and things pass through you. Like a good vowel movement. You let it go and you find ideas that way. I don't know where they come from and I don't bother asking.
For a man that sheds so much light, it's hard to see where the dark side of Robin Williams comes from. A Robin Williams quote that sticks out to me is, all it takes is a beautiful fake smile to hide an injured soul, and they will never notice how broken you really are. It makes me wonder how much time he spent hiding behind his own fake smile.
Yeah, at times like that, you understand that Marceau piece that he does that's so frightening, where the man is caught in the comic mask.
Yeah, I used to do a thing about that too, called Celebrity, about this man signing on a guy with the big smile, goes home and I takes off like...
And as a monster. But
yeah, it's like a whole bizarre thing, because sometimes maintaining that is a very scary thing.
And not being able to get out of it.
Yeah, it's true. You said about sometimes being on, that people want you to be a certain way, and sometimes you can't help but be depressed, or just the nature of being.
How do you work through that? All performers do experience kind of depression, and I once saw a show of Steve Martin's that I thought was quite good, and he said I wasn't really feeling funny that night, but I worked my way through it.
We have autopilot. I mean, there's something in your way. There'll be certain things that you can do that will work, but
For me, I love to take the chances and improvise. That's when that's the greatest high in the world, when you're trying new stuff.
Yeah.
Or getting suggestions and playing and doing new things. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite. That's the unknown, the special land.
Robin was quite open about his problems with substance abuse over the years. But how did his addictions begin? And where does someone find the courage to step away from these habits?
But do you remember getting into it?
Getting into it? No.
Was
I
it a
remember
gradual thing? Or?
It was very gradual. It's just, and you're off,
Yes.
you're off and running.
Of course, there are people who would say, why did you ever need cocaine?
Yeah, it's a bit redundant.
You're as fast without it as the heaviest cocaine addict would be.
Yeah, it's that weird thing. But I think I did it because it would actually allow me not to talk. It was like, reverse medication. Why they give Ritalin to hyperactive children is that idea of kind of, oh, okay, I don't have to talk to people. It just kind of shuts you down, which is,
How hard was it to break the grip the second time around?
Not hard once you go to rehab. I mean, rehab
Really?
is, that's the beginning of kind of, the idea is you got to surrender. You got to just say, I can't do it. Because, I went to rehab with a lot of doctors and psychiatrists. And the more intelligent you think you are, the harder it is to let go. You think, I've got a solution. I'll just drink a little bit. And then you have to go, nope, you lose. You can't do it. You need help. And at that point, that's the beginning.
The best known Robin Williams quote, I think, is that cocaine is God's way of showing you that you're earning too much money.
Yeah, because I knew people that just literally, snorted their income. The Columbian College Fund. The truth is, a lot of times, you don't have to pay for it if you're famous, because people want to give it to you, because they somehow it gives them control over you. Because once you're really into it, you'll do anything. You'll talk to people that you normally wouldn't talk to in daylight, but you'll hang out with them till 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's what's ludicrous.
Why did you do it so much?
I don't know, because people said, do you have a drug problem? I say, no, everybody has it. Everyone offers it to you at a certain point. It's just developing that skill, which is what they try and teach children, to say, no, there's no need. Why? If you don't enjoy it, why do you keep doing it? Because it's everywhere. And part of me figured out later that it was just this desire. It was a great way to kind of avoid contact with people. As much as it was like partially meeting them, but it was also you pulling back. It's so nice now to have conversations with people.
How did you get off it?
Just realized this is ridiculous. I was about to have a child, and I didn't want to be going, hey, it's at 4 o'clock in the morning, want to play with Dad? I wanted to be able to not miss that.
With drinking, you're jumping over the edge. There was a guy who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, and he survived. And they said, do you have anything to say? He said, yes. Halfway down, I thought it was a bad idea. And I had 20 years sober, and then all of a sudden I thought, I could drink again. No, you can't.
On August 11th, 2014, one of the most funny and influential people in the world passed away. Rest in peace, Robin. Your legacy will live forever. Trent Reznor is most famously known for being the frontman and core contributor of the world-renowned rock group 9-Inch Nails. Generally associated with dark sound and imagery, Reznor's work has a unique style that has resulted in 13 Grammy nominations and the sale of over 20 million records. Though he reached great success in the early years of 9-Inch Nails, Trent was not someone who dealt with the pressures of fame in a positive manner.
At the time when fame presented itself to me, I was not at a point in my own life where I was equipped to deal with it in any way.
I'm not really comfortable with any of the celebrity that goes along with just playing music, so I try to avoid it, and I don't. Not to be difficult, I just don't enjoy, that sort of thing.
And I had a built-in sense of not being good enough that I've carried with me from whatever it's come from. And an easy way to fit in was to self-medicate, and after a while, self-medication started to stifle anything creative or good that I had, including my ability to even like myself. And that led itself to a place where I had to get better. I hated who I'd become.
A pivotal moment in Trent's life was coming to terms with his addictions. During the tour for the album Downward Spiral, Trent's life became more and more of an accurate representation of the album name itself. It took Trent reaching rock bottom for him to come to terms with what was needed to turn his life around and create great pieces of music once again.
We started as a medium-sized band in America. When we ended up, we were a big band. And I really didn't, my head was spinning when I got off that tour. And I allowed some external forces to kind of shape my own personality, and I became something I said I never would be. I turned into someone I didn't like that much. Pretty bad place, actually, like emotionally and spiritually, where I was really just genuinely unhappy. And I've realized that as an artist, I have to draw upon a place where I have to examine myself and really try to understand why I feel the way I do about certain things, and have the courage to look into that mirror and see it. And now in retrospect, I look back to that time and I realized the last thing I wanted to do was do that. The last person I wanted to spend time with was myself at that time. So I did anything that made me think I was busy, but I wasn't really addressing the situation. It took me getting to a place of like being at the bottom and really having the courage to face myself and say, you know, you got everything you ever want in life, and you're miserable. And that made me feel worse because I had no excuses. Like I got everything I ever dreamed I'd ever get, because I never thought I'd get it. I got it.
It makes sense that some of his most well-known songs are his darkest. But what are his thoughts on creating from a place of emotional darkness? And what is his preferred state of mind while writing music?
You know, if you'd asked me that question, what state of mind produces my best work, 10 years ago, I would have said pain and despair and desperation and aggravation. And given the choice to punch a wall or write a song, I'd have to be in that mindset to get something out that mattered. Or utter defeat, or one of those things was the motivation to channel that energy into something that might be considered positive instead of self-destructive. Not being in that place allows me to think a lot more clearly about things than I could if I have to be in that place to write, you know. And much like every other role that drugs or alcohol played in my life, I realized that also was more hindering than it was freeing. And then a lot of that was a lie and a cheap way to get to some place. It wasn't real anyway. You know, and I can function much better creatively as well as, you know, in life in general.
Now that we've heard how sobriety has affected his songwriting, it makes me curious if he has the same outlook when it comes to performing.
Were you also at all nervous about, you know, going back and performing, being clean?
Yeah, I mean, the last times I played, the last year of touring in 2000 was being sick every single day and lying to myself and living in this terrifying world of being physically addicted to something. If I didn't have a drink before I went on, I'd get sick, and it was just terrible. That was soul-crushing year, just bad time. And I gotta admit, you know, the day of the first show, I woke up nervous, you know, and it wasn't like I want to go have a drink. It was just like, I hope I don't feel that way before I go on stage, you know. And I didn't, you know. I went on, and it was a great show, and the next day I kind of thought about it, but not really, and then I didn't even think about it. It just became how I remember it being before that last year of touring. You know, it was something to look forward to, and it's fun playing live, and it's great to look out and know that I can't wait to play these songs for you, and I'm not dying on stage while I'm doing it.
Following his addiction, it's no surprise Trent would take the opportunity of a new album to reflect on darker times with his next song, With Teeth. Rather than explaining the meaning of the lyrics, he thinks it's important for people to draw their own conclusions of his work.
I don't really like to get into lyrics and what they're about that much, just because I think it kind of doesn't really matter. You know, to me, what's always been the songs that have meant the most to me, they're what I think they're about, you know, and it's always better than what the guy that wrote it's about, you know. Or when you mishear a lyric and the one that you've thought you've heard is better than the real one when you finally see it. Like, books are better than movies because you design it to set you the way you want it to look, you know, and I don't like to have my personality or what I'm up to outside this room or overshadow what I think the most important thing is, which is, to me, the music.
And his music has stood for itself in a profound way. But why exactly is it that tens of millions of people have resonated so immensely with it? I believe it's the sense of sincerity held in his work. Each song is an accurate reflection of who he is in the moment of its creation.
You know, when I've sat down to write, I've always tried to have the main criteria just be to be honest with myself about how I feel about whatever it is that I happen to be writing about. And try to be as brutally honest and not cater to anything other than what excites me as an artist and as a person. And, you know, as long as it feels valid to me and feels sincere, I would hate to think I would ever be in a position where I'm faking it to get a paycheck. You know, it's been 4.5 years since we've toured or I've been on stage. And a big question for me was wondering if this is going to still seem valid and relevant. As of right now, we've played a handful of shows that went as good as I could have hoped. You know, it felt real on stage. I don't feel like I'm playing a role of someone I used to be. It feels relevant, it feels valid. I'm very happy to say that it feels that way. You know, not that I would sit here and say that it doesn't feel that way, but I'm telling you the truth that it does. Believe me, it does. You know.
Years ago when I did the music that was going to be Pretty Hate Machine, I'd always wanted to be in a band. I thought I wanted to do this, I thought. And when I finally had the courage to sit down and try to write music, first I just tried to write lyrics just to have lyrics to put in a song. It didn't mean anything, they were bad. And it wasn't until I had the courage to I realized I was keeping a journal of like things that I wouldn't show anybody and things I wasn't really proud to feel, but I had to get it out somehow. And so when I incorporated them into a few songs, and I realized that I'd struck something that made me feel better to get it out, and it had an honesty and an integrity to it that I think can only come from meaning something instead of pretending that you're a character doing something. So I kind of used that as the framework for 9 Inch Nails, where every record I've done really expresses where my head's been at when I've done it. I think it has a truthfulness to it and an integrity or sincerity that I think that's where it's going. I know that, I mean, now I'm faced with some, hey, The Fragile doesn't sound like Downward Spiral. In America, it hasn't sold as well as Downward Spiral did. No, did you think it's a failure? No, I don't. It reflects where I've been when I did it, and that's the record I had to make and very proud of.
When I think of honesty in lyrics, I think of his 1994 song Hurt. Perhaps the thoughtful integrity Trent poured into this song is the reason Johnny Cash created the well-known cover towards the end of his life.
The whole Johnny Cash thing came up at a time right when I was about to start writing this record, and I was kind of technically in my time off phase, you know, but what was going through my head was really questioning my own relevance, and I was wondering if I had anything to say or if I was any good, and just kind of really thinking about those things. And Rick Rubin, who's a good friend of mine, called me up and asked me how I'd feel about Johnny Cash covering Hurt, and I was flattered. Okay, great. And I think I kind of assumed it would be one of 100 songs they might, try for an album. And then a while later, I got a CD in the mail. You know, it surprised me that I felt a bit kind of invaded, like his voice was in my song, and it sounded funny to me. I wasn't in the mood to really listen. I was doing something else. And then not long after that, I got the video in the mail from Mark Romanek, and that's when everything kind of goosebumps, wet eyes. You know what I mean? I couldn't believe how emotionally powerful that video was, and how that Johnny Cash could juxtapose his life against my words in that song, and just felt incredibly powerful, and just felt really privileged to be involved in that in whatever abstract way that I was, you know. And sad that it became the context, you know, in his life, and which context it ended up becoming at the end of his life. But it's a very flattering situation to have somebody that's such an immense talent and icon as him, and great songwriter, asked to sing your song, and then him turning it into this thing that really beautiful. And it felt like it felt really, at the time, it felt really comforting and like a pat on the back in a way of like, you know, you can do this, get out there and write an album. And, you know, it felt good to me. I'm very flattered to be involved in it.
There's no doubt Johnny Cash's version of Hurt has an element of authenticity to it, and that this was important to Trent. However, Trent felt a loss of this essential authenticity in rock and roll music as the early 2000s approached.
I mean, generally through the history of rock, what's been good about it is the rebelliousness and the anti-establishment and the rule-breaking and the lack of political correctness, perhaps. And I think people want excitement and danger. And if you look at the rock bands out now, I don't see much of that. It's been sucked into the pop world. Personally, I find a sense of lack of sincerity, a bit of posturing. And that's what bands that I find that I like, I inherently have a sense that they mean it. And that matters to me. If I think somebody's just following the trend because that's what you do today, I can sound full of myself, but I can tell you that I'm glad to make money doing this, but I'm doing it because I love music and this is what I would do anyway. And if I had to work at McDonald's to make music at night, that's what I would do. But I think a lot of people now are doing music just to make money and trying to hoodwink people into believing that there's some sincerity there. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in a climate where you're much more congratulated on your business sense than you are your talent, that something's not quite right with the scene right now.
Well, you're seeing it in a lot of different arts too, where it's like really broad caricatures of very, very generalized things, a sort of pablumized, homogenized type of art. And I wonder sometimes, is that what people want, or is that what they're merely given?
Well, I think to a degree people will absorb what they're spoon-fed, and if you look at playlists and radios and videos now, it's apparent that people are buying what they're told to buy. But I do think there's a contingent of people out there that demand more from their art and want to get a greater meaning or depth, or want to read lyrics and think about it, or wonder what thought went into it, and then not treat music as just disposable crap that you buy on a little plastic thing and throw out when you're sick of it.
To me, rock music was never meant to be safe. I think there needs to be an element of intrigue, mystery, subversiveness. Your parents should hate it. And over 30 years after the founding of 9 Inch Nails, Trent continues to push the boundaries of rock music to the present day. Terence McKenna was an author and lecturer who advocated for the exploration of altered states of mind through the use of naturally occurring psychedelic substances. He grew up in Paonia, Colorado, where he developed a deep appreciation for nature and philosophy. After moving to California in his teens, he spent years studying, traveling, and experimenting. In 1976, Terence and his brother Dennis published the book Psilocybin, Magic Mushroom Grower's Guide. From then until his death, he spoke and wrote about anything from psychedelics to philosophy to language. Today he remains an established thought leader, and his work continues to expand people's minds. How, though, did his unique way of thinking begin? At the age of 19, he had a pivotal moment in his life, which may have been responsible for a great deal of his teachings.
I will never forget my first DMT trip because I was such a case going into it. When I was 19 years old, I was into Jean-Paul Sartre, Alfred Camus, Marxism, Freud. I was a jerk. And I came down from it and I said, I can't believe it. That was all I could say for about 20 minutes. I was in shock. I said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Jesus, I can't believe it. And I said, I've got to go back to square one. All these people I dismissed, all these people who say the universe is made of levels, who say there are disincarnate intelligences, who say that death is not simply the yawning grave. I had dismissed all those people as crybabies and sob sisters, and I said, no, the point of view that I previously dismissed is apparently what's actually happening. So in a single experience, I was converted from naive rationalism, realism, reductionism to my present position, whatever it is. Really, all I've done is worked out the implications of the personal implications for me of the DMT flash, and I've also tried to create linguistic models. So the worth of it is that it shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the world is made of magic. That's what the world is made of, not natural law, not interlocking cause and effect, not any of these things that are normally. The world is magic, not a little bit, 100%. Every atom from one end of this cosmos to the other is magic, magic, magic. Certain concerns just die in the first 30 seconds of the DMT flash and can never be brought back, to my mind. I felt in danger of dying from astonishment when I did it, and I do every time I do it. I mean, I don't know how they keep the lid on this stuff. I mean, I think that this is the secret that wants to be told. It's what everyone thinks is impossible. That's actually what it is.
Through mind-shifting astonishment, Terence's life was altered forever. Having broken down the barriers of rationalism and realism, his first DMT trip opened his eyes to a completely different way of seeing the world. Although if these new insights suggest the world is made of magic, then what is Terence's definition of magic?
The question is from a stage magician, and the question is, what is the nature of magic, or what is magic, or the wonder that it invokes? There are two theories about how the world works, and each one depends on a fundamental assumption about what the world is. There's the scientific theory, which says the world is tiny packets of matter squealing along through empty space at close to the speed of light and subject to a certain set of interlocking laws. That's what science tells us the world is. Another theory is the world is language. The world is made of language. We can say that the world is composed of little demons doing calisthenics, each one the size of a pissant's eyebrow. Or we can say the world is made out of wave mechanical packets of matter flying along at the speed of light. But notice that what we get each time is words. Our model of what the world is made of words. And the world is composed of description. Now, in the era before science, scientists like to say people didn't have a clear understanding of the division between the inside and the outside, between what we imagine and what actually is. But if you live long enough, I think you discover what we imagine and what actually is are very close to the same thing. Now, whenever you say the world is made of language, the positivists object by saying, well, then why isn't it the way we say it is? I didn't say it's the way we say it is. I said it's made of language. And part of the inspiration for my career is the realization that you could get up in front of audiences and say how the world is, and to a small degree, for a limited time, in a limited space, it shimmers and recasts itself and becomes the thing that we say that it is. The mind is somehow a co-creator in the process of reality through acts of language. And language is very, very mysterious. I mean, it is true magic. People run all over the place looking for paranormal abilities. But notice that when I speak, if your internal dictionary matches my internal dictionary, that my thoughts cross through the air as an acoustical pressure wave and are reconstructed inside your cerebral cortex as your thought. Telepathy exists. It's just that the carrier wave is small mouth noises. You sing it into existence, that what you say it is what it is, that it is maintained in existence by an act of rational apprehension. And it's only science which has taken this very weird approach and said, no, the world is somehow independent from the act of description. Science carried out its analysis of nature to the point where it shot itself in the foot. Science carried out an analysis of nature that went to such depth that it discovered that nature doesn't exist except as an object of description.
If nature is an object of description, then Terence has certainly done a great job explaining what the world is. Looking further into his teachings, there's countless hours of Terence McKenna lectures recorded over the years. It may be overwhelming trying to figure out where to begin, although there is an interlocking theme that seems to connect them all.
Well, the theme that unites these lectures is creativity and the techniques by which the artist can refine his or her vision, expand the vision, communicate the vision. And when I think like that, of course, I cast my mind back to nature. Nature is the great visible engine of creativity against which all other creative efforts are measured. And creativity in nature has a curious distribution. It's something which accumulates through time. If we stand back and look at the universe, we see that at its earliest moments, it was very simple. It was a plenum. It was without characters or characteristics. It takes a while for it to undergo a declension into more creative realms. And these creative realms are distinguished as domains of difference. The precondition for creativity is, I think, disequilibrium, what mathematicians now call chaos. And through the life of the universe, as temperatures have fallen, more and more complex compound structures have arisen. And though there's been many a slipping back in this process, over very large spans of time, we can say that creativity is conserved, that the universe becomes more creative, and out of that state of creative fecundity, more creativity is manifest. So that from that point of view, the universe is almost what we would have to call an art-making machine, an engine for the production of ever more novel forms of connectedness, ever more exotic juxtapositions of disparate elements. And out of this, I believe, arises implicitly a set of principles that we can then apply to the human artist in the human world. Nature's creativity is obviously the wellspring of human creativity. We emerge out of nature almost, and this idea I think was fairly present close to the surface of the medieval mind, we emerge out of nature almost as its finest work of art.
Just as he emerged from nature in 1946, he left in the year 2000. Though he passed away from a highly aggressive form of brain cancer, Terence still opens minds today through the finest work of art he has left behind: his knowledge.
Jim, what do young people worship today? What do they believe? What do they hang on to? What do they hope for?
I can't speak for young people, but probably a guess would be the same things they've always celebrated, just kind of a joy of existence, self-discovery, freedom, that kind of thing.
Well, there's always been a generation gap in every age, but the gap now seems to be much more of a definite cleavage. The young people today seem to feel and think differently. What do you think has brought this about?
So-called generation gap could be a result of larger numbers of young people. I think it happened after World War II. I think it's something like over half the population of the United States now is under 18 years of age, something like that.
Politically and philosophically, the young people now seem to feel very definite ideas about the establishment, old systems of governing people, and moral attitudes.
Yeah. When I was in high school and college, the kind of protest that's going on now was totally unheard of. At that time, to be a teenager, to be young, was really nothing. It was kind of a limbo state. And I think it's amazing, just in the last 5 years, what's happened is young people have come increasingly aware of the power and the influence that they have as a group. It's really amazing.
Does it surprise you that there is so much revolt on the campuses of this country against Washington and its policies?
It really surprises me because, as I said before, when I was growing up and when I was in school, that was totally unheard of. You know, students really had no power. But if you look back in history, it seems to bear out the fact that every revolution has started with students and spread to workers, and I'm not predicting there's going to be a drastic turnover in this country, but all the indications are there.
Life does seem to become more and more involved and complex. You know, we're becoming computerized and dehumanized in that process. That bugs me. I wonder how it bothers you and your generation.
There does seem to be a trend toward a return to a kind of primitive outlook on life, a more tribal attitude, and I think it's a natural reaction to industrialization, but unfortunately it's kind of naive, because I think the future is going to become increasingly mechanized, computerized, as you call it, and I don't think there's any turning back. It's just figuring out a way to survive and thrive in that kind of society. I don't think there's any chance of going back. Look at it this way too. The hippie lifestyle is really a middle class phenomena, and it could not exist in any other society except ours, where there's such an incredible surfeit of goods, products, and leisure time. I think that's the reason for it, because the generations immediately preceding ours had world wars and depressions to contend with, and for the last 10 or 15 years in this country, there's time enough and there's money enough to live kind of a flagrant, outrageous lifestyle, which was impossible before.
Jim, there's a line in your book of poems which reads, "The cleavage of men into actor and spectators is the central fact of our time." Well, I think that's undeniable, but I wonder, hasn't it always been that way with society?
I suppose it has, but with mass media, today, it becomes more immediately apparent. I think what I was concerned with in that book was the fact that most people feel completely void and helpless in controlling their own destinies or controlling the destiny of human life. I think it's sad. More people should be involved rather than designating all these powers to a few individuals. I think the average person, whatever that is, should be a part of it somehow. And I think everyone feels that events are just going on without their knowledge or control. I think it's one of the tragedies of our time. I suppose it has always been that way, but now it's just become so obvious, Decisions are made for you in which you have no part of at all. I just lament the fact that so many people are content with living a very quiet, well-mannered, orderly life when so many obvious injustices, I guess, are going on, and they seem to ignore it somehow, or not care at all. Just let it happen without ever becoming involved. I think that's sad.
Jim, relevant to your theory that people should get more involved in life and thus enjoy it more, you have written a line of poetry which reads, "The spectator is a dying animal." Now, isn't that a bit of a contradiction to what you've said previously?
No, it's concerned with that same split between the actor and the audience. To me, there's something incredibly sad about a bunch of human beings sitting down watching something take place. And just when you think about it, I love movies as much as anyone else, but the spectacle of millions and millions of people sitting in movie theaters and in front of television sets every night watching a second or third hand reproduction of reality going on when the real world is right there in their living room or right outside in the street or down the block somewhere. I think it's a tool to somnambulize or hypnotize people into a kind of waking sleep. But I think the major influence in the next decade or so is going to be the people who are able to assemble masses, huge masses of people into one spot, as we've witnessed in pop festivals in the last 2 or 3 years. I think will be the major influences on mass culture in the next decade. I think the rock music enthusiasts have created probably some of the most exciting music and theatrical events on the planet. I think they're fantastic.
Well, part of generation gap is the difference in what people like in terms of music. Now, this is something that distresses me a little bit. It seems that the young people like all the same kind of thing. Now, I want more out of the young people than just that.
Yeah, well, they're being programmed by their radios. They only play, the major radio stations, rock stations, only play 30 songs over and over and over, 24 hours a day. And it's been proven what you hear the most is what you like the most. So there's really no choice involved. Someone is programming it.
So we are the victims of media.
Uh-huh. What everyone should say is the medium is the message, and the message is me. I mean, that's the answer, is for everyone to, you're asking for an answer. The answer is for everyone to stand up and say, I'm me. and be fully aware of that fact and let everyone else know it.
Yeah.
That you are yourself. And express it.